So I just want to welcome everybody to the Walleye-Palooza in Fairview, Pennsylvania. My name is Captain Pete Alex. I'm a local resident, live in Northeast PA. A little bit about myself real quick. Started trolling in 1979 with my dad, primarily, coho fishing back then. And through the years, we saw the evolution of the walleyes kick in, the steelhead kick in, different tactics definitely kick in, electronics, a whole raft of different things to make fishing a little easier. It wasn't so easy back in those earlier days for you older guys that remember. So fishing got a little easier with the advent of electronics, fish hawks, lead core, wireline, all those things. So seen a lot over the years, and I like to fish for walleyes. And a couple other quick things. I serve as an advisor for the Pennsylvania or the Great Lakes Fishery Commission, and a couple other committees on Lake Erie with the Fish Commission. And I'm also the president of our Sports Fishing Association, which has a table back there. So that is my intro a little bit here. And I like to fish. I spent a lot of time in Lake Ontario as well. So we got Captain Bob is co-speaking with me today, so I'm going to let Bob introduce himself.
Good morning. I'd like to thank Fish USA for having us today. So my name is Bob Ferraro. My nickname on the lake is Dr. Bob, and quite frankly, from a medical standpoint, just for full disclosure, I'm a retired cardiologist, but all I'm good for now is free advice. So at this point, I'd rather be fishing, and that's why I'm here talking. So I learned to fish with guys like Pete. In my free time, I actually worked as a mate for charter captains, and if I had one bit of advice for people, fish with other guys, fish on other boats. You learn a lot. Some of the stuff you'll take isn't what you want to do, but you'll take the good and keep doing what works for you as well. But over the years, like I say, I've learned a lot fishing with the charter captains in the area. And in fishing with Pete, I learned a tremendous amount, but I also learned that he doesn't give away all his little secrets. And I can prove that because I have a lot of second place finishes in tournaments to this guy on my right. So I'm looking forward to talking with you today and answering questions as we go along. I'll just give a little outline of what we're going to do. We're going to start out, and we'll keep it informal. We're going to sort of go through our walleye season here in Erie, PA. So we'll start out with early May, or late May, I should say, in June, where we fish in the shallower water, 30 foot of water, and what techniques we use for that. Then we'll move to the July, August, June, late June and July and August, where we're fishing in the 45 to 60 foot of water. We'll go over some presentations there, and then talk about the deep water program in August and September, which is pretty awesome around here. So that's kind of the outline of what we're going to do, and I'll turn it over to Pete again.
So a couple housekeeping items. So let's give the folks at Fish USA a round of applause for hosting this event again, their facility. So where's all the Fish USA guys? Let's put your hand up. Where are you at? So appreciate it, guys, for opening the facility, and the Suns for the hot dogs and the memberships. EPSFA is over there with memberships, and I'll just give a plug for those guys, the Suns especially. These are hardworking guys, most hardworking guys in Erie County for sure. They do a tremendous amount for the community, for kids. Can't say enough good things. So their payback really is you guys buying a membership, really. I mean, that keeps them going. So my advice is, sorry, Fish USA, buy one less spoon, guys, and buy a membership instead. So, or do both, but that might get me in trouble. I have a new friend up here. She's my runner, Lacey. Can you put your hand up? So Lacey is going to be the runner for me and Bob. So whoever gets one of these hats or shirts or whatever we got up here, she's going to help us, and she'll find you. So if she's looking for you, put your hand up, please. Was there a hand already? Who did that? You're out of here. Chris, escort him out. Get him out of here. So we're gonna loosen you guys up real quick here with a joke. And the joke is, where do fish go for a loan? Where do fish go for a loan? Oh, good. No, close though. No, that's it. 3 strikes out. Loan sharks. They go to a loan shark. I'll give you one more easy one. This one you might be able to get. What kind of fish eats mice? Who said catfish? All right. Lacey, we got 2. So there's a few hands that got this, so it's up to her who's the winner. So she's got 2. Okay, so it's your call, Lacey. Make sure they thank you. So give her a tip. All right. One more here. Who drove the furthest? Anybody further than Pittsburgh? Anybody further than Pittsburgh? Nobody. What size shirt do you wear? Hook them up. You get a Vision Quest shirt. Congratulations. Too late. Too late. So one more thing here. This is not your typical seminar presentation. We don't have a PowerPoint. So it's going to be a little loose. You can ask some questions. We got some off-the-cuff stuff happening. This is going to be more fun than sit and look at a PowerPoint for 2 hours. We're going to take a break right around 12:30. Okay, so if you guys got to leave, cut out. I get it. Grab a hot dog, buy some stuff, memberships, whatever. So we'll take about a 15-minute break, about 12:30. And then Bob, you want to lead off with how, I guess, we're going to take you through the series like Bob explained, really how we all start fishing in Lake Erie. We're not going to talk about night fishing. That's a whole different program. But really, when the lake starts to warm, where do we start fishing? Most of us during the daytime. And that's going to be that inside water, 18 to maybe 30 foot of water. So Bob's going to lead off this segment about what he does, really.
Yeah. Well, Pete's up in Lake Ontario for most of April, May, and even into June a little bit. I stick around here, so I really start my fishing in April for lake trout. And even though we're not talking about lake trout today, I think we should have a good fishery this year, trolling, because the water should be cold. Every year's different. Last year wasn't so good, but the point I'm trying to make is we'll go out and we'll troll for lake trout and we'll catch, quite a few. And then when that starts to dwindle off, which is usually early, mid-May, depending again on the year, then that's when I start to target the walleye. So I use that kind of as a barometer when the water starts to warm up. The other barometer, as Pete said, is the night fishermen, because once they start reporting that they're catching a lot of walleye inshore at night, that kind of gives me the hope that I can start catching some during the day in this inner water in the 20 to 30 foot range. The one thing that's always amazed me is the fact that the guys on the West Basin can troll in 40-degree water with plugs going slow and catch big walleye. And we have a little bit more difficulty accomplishing that here during the daytime. So I always wondered what is the difference? And maybe somebody has a good answer, maybe Pete does. The one logical explanation I've heard is the water on the West Basin is much more turbid. The turbidity of the water is higher there. And as we know, walleye are spooky from boats. Okay, they scatter to the side, they head down when the boat comes over them. So that's one factor where they may have an advantage over us. Our water is much clearer here in the central basin. But as Pete will tell you, there's different techniques we use in the shallow water. I'm not a worm fisherman, so I can't really give you a lot of advice there, but I mostly use the plugs in mono for my presentation in front of the condos, the Walnut Creek area, and off the point in that 30 foot of water. But Pete's going to talk about using jet divers, which is another real effective way of catching fish in that shallow water in the spring.
Right. Hey, Bob, you want to hand me the
Sure.
the older Dakota reel?
Okay.
Older Dakota on the other side. Yep. Everybody, does everybody fish planer boards for walleyes? Or how many guys? Quite a few here. Good. So obviously, when we're fishing this shallow water, again, we'll just call it 15 to 30 foot of water early in the year, right? It's when the walleye fishing kind of kicks off. You know, our program, we have two. I have two programs in there. One is just plain old, monofilament fishing, whether you're using 12 or 14 pound mono, right? We put fluorocarbon leaders, about 8 foot of fluorocarbon leaders on the end of these rods for obvious reasons. Fluorocarbon is a visible line. And when we're fishing in the shallow water, again, majority of the fish we catch are off our planer boards. Walleyes are spooky, very spooky fish most of the time, except when the water's colored up. When the water's green, has the brown tinge to it, sometimes you can catch these walleyes a little closer to the boat. And the stealth tactics are not as important. But a typical program for both of us is going to go, we're going to set up in that shallower water. We're going to pay attention to the surface temperature. We're going to pay attention to water color. Sometimes the water is real turbid in there. It's brown. Sometimes you want to fish out of that brown water a little bit where it's a little more green. The fish can see your lures a little bit better. So these are some things we pay attention to. We pay attention to the warmer water versus the cooler water, because this time of year, you've got colder water just sitting outside the warmer water. That warmer water is along the shoreline, which attracts a lot of walleyes and activates the walleyes. So typically we're going to set up and we're going to deploy, these we call them mono rods, monofilament fishing rod. This is a 7 foot rod, which I like, 12 or 14 pound line. And we are going to not really experiment, but we're going to start with deeper diving lures on each side of the boat. Like my port side might have lures that dive 12 to 14 feet, and my starboard side setup might have lures that dive 4 to 6 feet deeper than those. And we're going to deploy those in the morning and kind of go from there as we troll and see which sides start to get bit the most. Really, we don't typically start with the same stuff on both sides. So we're going to move around a little bit with our baits. Another thing we do in that shallow water is we'll deploy the smaller dipsies, the 84 millimeter or the next size down from your standard dipsies with monofilament line, or a lot of guys use braid. You can use braid. Dipsy diver rods with small spoons or stick baits, shallow run and stick baits, and set these dipsy divers out to the side, like on a 4 setting, so they're getting away from the boat, both sides. So we'll run one per side, and again, we'll let the depth of the water dictate how far these out. So typically we'll run 4 board lines aside, so we've got 8 rods out there. We've got 2 dipsies, now we got 10 rods. And we will fish some downriggers in there, but we don't put a lot of faith or have a lot of faith in our downriggers in that shallow water. They don't catch a whole lot of fish. You can catch some fish quick in the morning on them because the fish are a little dumber, they're hungry, aggressive in the morning. So we can catch some fish on our downriggers in that shallow water. But in order of importance, Bob?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Pete. We have to experiment, see what works for us. Typical lures would be, like he'd say, a deep diver. A bango lure is very effective. Sometimes the fish are down in the mud. You have to experiment where they're at. And I don't use the large deep diving lures like they do on the West Basin. They use bandits a lot. You can do that, but I think, at least from what I've seen, our fish tend to like the medium-sized lures a little bit more than the bigger ones for whatever reason. Some people use slide divers too in the shallow water. I don't like them in deep water, but that's another option for using a dipsy. So the deep thunder sticks, bango lures, 24A bombers, and you should be familiar with your dive charts for those lures. There's lots of apps that we have available, and again, you don't have to buy every different type of lure, but the lures you have, just stick with them, learn how to use them, learn the dive curves, and then you can adjust from there. So I'd also say that even though we're talking about fishing in front of the tribs in that shallow water, there are walleye off the point in a little deeper water, but you have to realize, and then this is where your fish hawk comes into play, those fish are usually in that top 15 feet. So you can target them out there in that 30, 40 foot of water off the point if you want to stay away from the crowds in front of the beaches.
Right, and so we also will stagger how far we put back our lures. Obviously, the further back you go with deep divers, they go where? Deeper, right? So they go deeper. So another thing we do is when we set up in the morning or as the day goes, we're not going to run both sides of our planer board system the same. 100 feet, 100 feet. We don't do that. We might have a side only 60 feet back with these deeper or medium diving baits, and we might have a side over here 100 feet back. And again, we're going to let the side dictate the more productive side. So if the 60-foot side is going, obviously we're probably going to pull these in over here, use our noodles, make an adjustment, bring these into 60 feet also, right? But typically not going to be all in with everything the same. We're going to play with two sides, let the fish tell us where they're at in water column, and make adjustments as the morning goes.
It's really a great time of year because we don't have all that paraphernalia on our lines. We're just fishing with usually mono and some plugs, and you can actually feel the fish fight. And even though walleye come in like a boot a lot of times, I've noticed in the spring and early part of the year, they can actually fight pretty nicely, especially when they get close to the boat. So,
yep. So one thing about the Palooza, we just break protocol. So I'm just going to remind you guys or tell you guys, this is a disclaimer, okay? There's no guarantees from anything Bob and I tell you. We might lie to you. We might tell you the truth. But if you guys walk out of here and say, I tried with Bob said and what Pete said and it didn't work for me, we have a disclaimer on everything you hear today. No guarantees. So I'm going to throw that in there. Right, Lacey? No guarantees in life.
Do you want to mention jet divers?
Yeah, so always just real quick. So Bob and I kind of painted the picture, of a basic, real simple program. We rely heavily on our planer boards that time of year. We don't put them out the same sides. We adjust lures. I'll give you an example. What would you say the depth of that goes, Bob? The bomber.
Depending on how far you go back.
So
18
feet.
Yeah, 16, 18 feet. Right.
16 to 18?
Yeah.
So there's a good example of a lure that goes 16 to 18 feet. Here's another example of a kaboom or a deep storm thunder stick that'll go maybe around 12 feet, right? So Bob's going to run a side of a lure that goes 16 to 18 feet in, say, 30 foot of water. We're going to have a side over here that only goes 12 feet, right? Just put them back 100 feet. He might put those back 100 feet because they're going different depth. And we're going to let the fish dictate the bite. Talk about colors for a second, especially morning colors and dirty water colors.
Right. I think lure color definitely matters. The action may matter more, however, but the old adage, dark days, dark lures, bright days, bright lures. Shiny stuff does work even in dirty water. It attracts the fish. And some of the UV lures might be very beneficial in low light conditions as well to attract the fish. So, generally darker colors when it's not as light out, and chromy colors when it's bright and sunny tend to work well. But again, you have to experiment with what's working with your program. I'll tell a little story while Pete's looking around here. So let's just paint a little scenario. It's not necessarily the early spring scenario, but let's say you have you're trolling and you have a planer board out in your port side and you have 3 lures on that planer board. Whether you're fishing, let's say you're fishing with 3 colors of lead and some shallow divers, and you put them out, and the outside one goes right away, catch a fish on it. Let's say it's a fire tiger. So you move the other ones down the line, and you put the fire tiger out again on the inside, and it goes right away. So you do it again, and so maybe you catch 3 fish in about 15 minutes with that one lure. So what do you do with the rest of your program? You put all the same ones on, okay? So then you're not catching anything. So what's happening then?
Go home?
No?
Call it a day?
Okay.
No?
Well, I've seen some interesting video with all the new technology out, and it's something that it maybe not the rule, but it can happen. And what might be happening is the lures you benched, the ones you took off to put the fire tiger on, were actually the ones that were attracting the walleye into your spread. And when they attracted in, but they didn't like the looks of it, when they got closer, they hit that fire tiger. So you put all of them on, and you're not getting as many fish attracted. It's just one scenario that could be a factor. So it's something that just to think about.
So colors matter, right? Everybody believe that color matter. They absolutely matter. So some of the things we do is we fish a lot of brighter colors, higher vis colors in the morning. Anybody know why? Low light? Who said that? Lace? Thank you. The shut up and fish hat guy right there. So mindset, right? We all wake up in the morning. Most of us are hungry and we want to eat, right? So the theory here is, guys, you want to give them something they can see in the morning. If these fish are swimming around looking to eat, that's exactly what they do, especially walleyes. If you're running, stealthy presentations or stealthy lures that don't show up very good in the water because of the light conditions, for example, or maybe the watercolor conditions, they're not going to see your lure as much as they would if it was a higher viz. So some of the things we do when we deploy a program in the morning, if we're out ultra early, I mean early, like the sun's not up, it's kind of like start glowing some stuff up. We use a lot of glow lures, stuff that has glow in them, or high vis lures that the fish can see. And we'll deploy those immediately in the morning for the sole purpose of giving those fish a target to see, okay? And more often than not, Bob, the sun comes up and the hot lures can go. So, once that morning bite's over, which is the typical easy part of the day, the fish get dumb in the morning, they're easy to catch. As soon as these lures start to cool off and we know there's still fish here, we see other guys catching them, we're going to methodically, start changing our lures from side to side. We're going to get rid of those high vis, kind of unnatural looking lures, and we're going to start putting on maybe more natural looking lures and match the sun conditions with maybe some metallics. Clear water might indicate another color choice for us, but we're not going to sit there and troll around for the next 2 hours and hope for another bite, right? We're going to instantly notice the bite changed. It was probably because of the lure choice, and start making changes. We both fish a lot of metallics, a lot of metallic lures when the sun's out. Metallics help attract fish. They throw off light, they're down there wiggling, and they look a little bit natural. Obviously, metallics look like fish, right? Most of them, not gobies, obviously, but bait fish. They look like smelt, they look like emerald shiners, and they're an attraction. So we switch up the chromes quite a bit. Probably one of the best colors is, the old fire tiger. If you guys don't have fire tiger lures and you're out to catch walleyes, you got to have fire tiger. It's probably, this thing's been killing fish since, I think I was born, really. It goes out almost every day. Brown trout love it. Walleyes love it. Smallmouth bass love it. A super good color. This is one lure to have in your arsenal in a variety of different baits, whether it's a stick bait, a medium diving bait, or a deep diving bait. Got any other hot colors, Bob? Any other hots?
No, that's, again, there's a lot of different flavors. Stick with what works for you. Rainbow trout patterns tend to work very well for fish. They can be calming during the day too. Just one thing I point out, maybe Pete doesn't agree, but on the lures that have 3 hooks on it, I usually take the front one off. It happens to be a Renoski. It just gets in the net and makes a mess. It's just something to consider. You can, the way walleye hit the lures, you can catch them on the back.
Yep.
Hook.
Now that's a very good tip. Same thing. These stick baits that have 3 treble hooks in front of them, we always take the one that's closest to the head off. It's really an unnecessary set of hooks or a hook up there that there's one more hook that gets fouled in the net, one more hook that could go in your hand, and one more hook that could end up, on the side of a fish, make the fish very difficult to reel in and twist up your line. Can you?
By the way, I have no hook can on my boat, and I'm an expert at taking hooks out. So, again, no charge. Just a disclaimer, though, because I don't have no practice on it.
Do you make them sign a waiver before you inject them, or?
No? I'm tired of paperwork.
Okay. All right. Who fishes jet divers? Quite a few. Decent. So jet divers are kind of cool. This is a jet diver. Maybe Bob, if you want to hold that up a little bit, or you can even deleader it. But that's a jet diver. The beauty of jet divers are kind of fun to fish with, especially if you just get bored and you want to try a different technique, which we like to pull them out, not necessarily because we can't catch fish on like the mono setup we were talking about earlier. Sometimes it's just fun to catch walleyes on jets. It's just a different technique. And I'll tell you, the smaller walleyes that we periodically have in Lake Erie are suckers. They're suckers for jets. I don't know what it is, but those 15 to 22-inch walleyes just really get sucked into jets. I think they're attracted to them. You can wiggle that, Bob. I don't know if you can hear that, but a lot of these jets have little beads in them, so they're down there. Right, they're down there rattling. They're going through the water, making a little bit of turbulence as well. So they give a sound signal, more or less. The jets, they're a plastic device. They're down there. They're a floating device because they're plastic. But when they dig down there, they're moving around. They're giving the lure behind them very good action. And again, I mentioned you've got the noise that they create, a little bit of turbulence in the water, and they catch a lot of little walleyes, I'll tell you that. So jets are fun, and you can get these in 10, 20, 30, 40s, and I think 50s, which makes it nice about jets. It's very simple to gauge how deep in the water they go because they run relatively true. So if you have a 20 jet, you put back about 120 feet of line, it's going to go pretty close to that 20 foot.
You don't want to put a deep diving lure on a jet. Just a small spoon or a little lip, small lip plug works really well. I noticed that Pete has a braid set up for this. I think it's when you're fishing with jets, it's better to have braid. You don't want that extra stretch with the mono. So
right.
It's good to have dedicated setups for the jet divers, but they're very effective, as Pete said, and you can use them in deeper water as well.
So I use 30-pound braid on mine. It gets me a little bit more depth. I don't have to put as much line out because the braid cuts through. And when that braid gives you a really good feel with the rod. Braid doesn't stretch like mono, so you could actually feel that fight. You can even feel these small walleyes fight really good when you have braid on there. So that's another reason I like braid. Another reason I like braid is, when you trip these off your planer boards, if you set these jets to snap or release, it's like a dipsy diver. Some guys like them permanently locked. They let the fish fight them down. But these have a tripping mechanism. Bob can even show you, where it's a ball, basically like a ball and socket, like a dipsy diver. you snap them in, and it makes that jet go down. So a lot of times, if you don't want to fight the fish and the jet that's pulling down, you pop it off and you just give it a little snap like you would a dipsy diver just to trip it. It'll trip that jet, and it'll actually reverse itself and kind of float up. So it makes the fight a little bit easier.
The one thing with jet divers, when you get a big walleye on them, it's great. They come up to the surface and the fish comes in nice and easy. But God forbid you get a little silver bass on them, and you don't have a trippies one. You have the old-fashioned. It's like bringing in a foul hook sheephead. So it's when you get a walleye, it's a bonus.
We run about an 8-foot leader behind those, a 7 to 8 foot leader of I like 16-pound or 15-pound fluorocarbon line, a small snap swivel, and we run a lot of small spoons behind these. The Dreamweaver WD size or the Stinger Scorpion size. Basically, these lures that are 1.5 inches to maybe 2.5 inches, little spoons primarily, in a variety of colors like Fire Tiger, high vis stuff in the morning again, naturals as the day progresses. We'll switch those up. But they really, even the big walleyes will hit these, but the small spoons, especially when we have all these smaller walleyes in the lake, really dig these jets with small lures behind them. A huge difference from a bigger lure. Some guys will run shallow running stick baits behind them that don't dive deep. So you can run a 3-inch, like a Kaboom or a Rapala or something that does not dive very deep, and also run these behind jets effectively.
Yep. One other thing with this early season fishing, your fish finder may not be as useful in the inner water, in that 20, 30 foot of water. So you have to sort of, you'll see some fish on the bottom for sure, but it's not going to be like fishing out in 50, 60 foot of water where you can see the different levels when you find it.
Yep, and trolling speed, we don't troll really fast for walleyes this time of year. It's a little slower. For myself, I'm like a 2.2 to maybe 2.5, 2.6 would be on the high end trolling speed. And that's with the jets or with the plugs. Not too fast, not too slow. So a 2.2 to 2.6 is my range for trolling. I don't know about you, Bob, but what's your preferred?
Yeah, that's pretty much my target rate. You can run worm harnesses, again, with night crawlers behind. You might want to go a little slower if you were going to do that. They work well on jets. They work well on dipsy divers as well. But again, I'm not an expert at that. I don't use them. I'm mostly in the 2.2 to 2.5 range, 2.6 range.
Yep. One other, I guess, nice thing about the jets is when you're in this shallow water, it gives you very good depth control. I mean, if you're in 30 feet and you run a 20 jet, I mean, you're 10-ish feet off the bottom. So really good depth control. And just like we do with our lures, we might start with a 20 jet on one side, only 60 back, and we might start with a 20 jet on the other side, 120 back, right? So obviously the 120 side is going to be going deeper. The other side is going to be higher. And again, we're going to let the fish dictate where they are in the water column. And then if one side gets hotter than the other, sometimes both sides are hot. They both are chipping in, so we leave them. But we're going to let the fish dictate whether we need to tweak the other side, bring it up, or let it out further, or tighten it up. And then as the day goes, we will sometimes take a 20 jet off and put a 30 jet on just to push that jet really close to the bottom. If we feel the sun has come up, or if there's boat traffic around the shallow water, forces the fish closer to the bottom, we might take a 20 jet off, put a 30 jet on, and really push the bottom with these jets to get close. One other advantage of jets in shallow water is when you turn your boat, which happens a lot. If you're in tight quarters, you got to make quick turns. Other stuff might sink on you if you got lead core in there or you have weights or whatever. But the jets have a tendency to float, so it allows you to get basically less snags on your turns. Or if you have to put your boat in neutral for whatever reason, or slow your boat for whatever reasons, these things will float up and you'll get a lot less snags in that skinnier water.
Are there any questions about this shallow water fishing early spring?
Any questions on the jets or basic plug fishing with mono rods. Nope.
Oh,
Lighted lures, the ones that light up.
The question is, do we use any lighted lures? My answer is no.
Yeah.
I'm usually fishing when the sun is on its way up for me. So.
Are you running snubbers, rubber snubbers at all?
Rubber snubbers on the dipsies. Yes and no. I like rubber snubbers when we're steelhead fishing, and I will run them when we're skinny water walleye fishing. And at certain times of the year, I won't run them if we're fishing a lot deeper. But the key is, if you have really flexible dipsy diver rods, the snubbers on your dipsies are one of those. Maybe you need them, maybe you don't need them. There is no wrong answer whether you should run snubbers or not. Really, it's always the debate, yes or no. So it's really personal preference. But if you have nice soft rods that are limber, really that rod is in effect working like a snubber for you at that point. So,
yes, sir.
If you're just running a flat line and you're running a float, a lot of times I can't find out. I mean, I know the depth that they say they run, but they don't always say the length of line you should let out to reach that.
Okay, the question is, when you're trolling with mono and plugs, he's wondering about how much line you let out affects the depth, which it certainly does. A lot of those apps, if you look on the right apps, they will have different dive curves for how far the line goes out.
be ready.
The
Be ready. Hold on. Wait,
trolling
wait,
app.
nice.
Wait. The Romanac's trolling app really
Yep.
has that with the
Precision guide. I think
right,
it's called.
precision trolling, right? And you have to look though also at the pound test line. Okay, the thinner the line you're using, the deeper it goes. So they'll usually have a fire line or a braid, and then a mono, and then there will be a curve that'll tell you how deep that lure will go at what length of line you put out. So it will go maybe 15 feet with 90 feet out, and then 150 feet out, it may go 18 feet. So that they are on the dive curves.
There's a phone app you can get from, I believe it's called Precision Trolling. Maybe
Right.
someone here knows for sure, but it was a guy named Mark Romanak publishes a publication that you can get a book that shows you all the dive curves and line out depths and all that stuff. But you can get it in the phone app as well. So it's a pretty good book. A lot of us, we know where our baits are running from fishing a lot, right? Trial and error, pushing them back. Oh, we hit bottom. And so we bring them in. So part of it's just experience will help you with that. And then one more really important thing about trolling stick baits. I'm going to bring this lure up. You can't tell. Don't cheat.
I won't.
What's probably the most important thing you can do when you deploy a stick bait in the water? Who said that first? Lace. I'm going to give you. It's your call. There was a few hands up. So there's an XL and there's a hat. So put your hands up, 3 of you, and it's up to her. Okay. All right. She will find the winners.
Yeah.
Hey Bob, I'm gonna hold that chart up.
Okay.
If you want to use the laser.
Sure.
We'll just talk about some of
Absolutely.
the areas that we fish in that
Sure.
early period.
Okay. Just make one more comment about the shallow water. We know walleye like temperatures in the mid 60s, high 60s. They'll tolerate higher temperatures. The biologists tell us that the walleye stay in front of Walnut Creek area almost all year around, believe it or not, even when the water's warm. They have this spawning fidelity. We know there's a local group of walleye that spawn here, and it's interesting. A lot of the smaller fish, but they'll hang out in that 7 to 10 foot of water, the biologists tell us, all year round, even in August. It's kind of interesting. Fortunately, we have a good population now. Okay.
Hey Lace, I need you for this job. I'm just kidding you.
Nah.
I'll do this one. I'll hold it. Is this high enough, Bob?
Yeah, I think everybody can see it. So what we're talking about, this is Presque Isle Bay. Here's what we call the thumb, which goes into the first trench, second trench. There's a hump between the trenches, We have the ledge that goes a little east of Walnut. We have the mountain to the east with deep water, north of the mountain, shallow water. So in the spring, we're talking about fishing in this 30-foot of water, fishing off the beaches, fishing off Walnut, Trout Run, Elk Creek, in that area with whatever program you want to use for that 20 to 30 foot of water.
So I was up in Lake Ontario when the walleye fishing got started. Maybe some of you guys can kick in here. Maybe Ditch Chicken back there can kick in, or whoever. So when I was in Lake Ontario, I heard that the 30-foot program did not really materialize a whole lot last year. The lake didn't freeze. The lake warmed up pretty quick, and it seemed like there wasn't a whole lot of action in that 18 to 30 foot of water. Is that true? Yep. Well, only one guy said it's true.
Yeah.
Oh, more. We got more. So, what's the theory behind that, Bob?
Well, I mean, I think, like I say, every year is a little different. And to me, I started fishing out in the deeper water because the water temperature was up quite a bit. Again, the walleye follow the bait, but it was different. And this year, though, with the ice that we had on the lake, they may be right in there on that 20 to 30 foot of water. I don't know if you have any other thoughts on that.
No, I just think conditions were a little bit advanced by this time last year, and it seemed like the fish graduated out of that 30 foot. And this happened again, I'm not sure if it was a couple, 3 years ago, but we had another little phenomena that happened when this occurred, and those fish kind of did not inhabit that shallow water as much. It's when we had several days of wet wind direction, northeast, right? So this occurred before where we had day after day of northeast wind, or periodic northeast winds in this late spring, early summer. And what that did is drive what inside? Cold water.
Cold water.
Right. It brought a lot of cold water in. Those walleyes were a little uncomfortable, and it rolled some of that warmer water a little bit back out, to that 30, 40, 45 foot of water, and it iced the inside out. So not every walleye was inside there. A lot of them rolled out to a comfort zone. They got their butts up or their tails up and a little bit higher in that water column to find that preferred temperature, because there's not a lot of warm water around. And how we know this is, we use fish hawks. We watch our surface temperature gauges. We pay attention to what the winds have been doing. When I hear it's northeast wind, northeast wind, northeast wind, my mindset is it's going to dump a lot of cold water on it, inside water. And I know I might start in that 30 foot, but I'll notice my temperature down there. I'll put a probe down there, or look at my surface temperature, and I'm going to recognize right away, like, oh my gosh, it's like Chilly Willy in there. So my instinct is to go, I'm going to bump it north. I'm going to watch my temperature on the surface. I'm going to watch my temperature if I have a fish hawk down, and I'm going to watch for that thing to start incrementally getting warmer, warmer, warmer. More than not, what happens is twing, twing, twing. We start getting bites. Right. So we'll dial into that depth now. Now we have a new depth established. We're going to move east and west and start trolling in there. But there was a reason those fish weren't in there.
We had an extreme example of that last year when we had some northeast wind and cold water blew towards the shore, and we had a big sheephead kill. Yep. Those fish were not able to adapt to that temperature change. So that's how extreme it can be, even in June and July. It didn't kill enough of them, but it killed some. It says, what temperature are we looking for? Generally, walleye like mid-60s. Big walleye will hang out in 50-degree water. They'll vegetate 52, 55, maybe not 50 like steelhead, but they'll tolerate up into the 70s too. They'll chase the food. But in general, 65, 67 degrees.
Right. So in the spring, the answer is probably going to be as warm as you can find, really.
Yeah, right.
That outside water is still real cold. right? And your inside starts to warm up. So we're going to kind of monitor and look for the warmest water we can find. Okay, and that might be inside of 30 feet, depending on the wind issues, or it might, in that example of the northeast wind, where it rolled it out a little bit further, it's going to be bump it out till you find that water that was inside. It's out there somewhere. You go find that water again. And usually in the spring, if you start to troll too far north, what happens? Better put your jackets on, starts to cool off, and the bite will fizzle. So that sets the outside depth for us. Going too far north, water gets too cold, the bite immediately ends typically. So we'll go to the middle water.
Okay.
So Bob's gonna lead off, and we're into that June period now. The lake's, we're starting to get those nice sunny, calm days. The lake is progressively warming up. The fish are starting to bump out a little deeper. But before Bob leads off with that, we have another joke. Lacey, see if anybody can get this one. Which fish go to heaven when they die? Oh, that was excellent.
Yeah.
You guys did. Lacey, it's up to you. And these are smaller gloves. These are kind of medium, so find the right one. So put your hands up. Whoever said angelfish,
Yeah.
you're out. We're done. Yeah, you're out. You don't need those. You got a Carolina.
There you
So.
go. Okay.
Anyway, that was good.
Okay.
We're getting better with the jokes. So hands up. Okay. Bob is going to lead off this midwater.
Okay.
Depth.
So Pete sort of told you that a magic number in the spring, we look for water to be 60 degrees, 58, 60 degrees. We can start catching walleye during the day. But as the weather warms up, we know that the walleye will go deeper in the water column. I'm not saying you have to go out to 100 foot of water. Like Pete said, there are limits, but you'll usually see those fish in mid to late June. July, move out into that 40 to 60 foot of water. And this is where the temperature probe really comes into play, and your fish finder. Okay, now we're in water where the fish finder is going to tell you a lot. You see where your marks are, where the bait is, what the temperature is down below, and you fish accordingly. So usually we're out in 45 to 60 foot of water. We're, again, south bank. If you're fishing on the west side, then the south bank of the trench is really good. In this area before the first trench, off the point, and off the dump. The dump is a good place around there as a landmark fish in the 45, 50 foot range. Or on the east side off Shades, or further east, again, south of the mountain is where we're usually fishing that time of year. And we're going to use our fish finders to target the depth that we want to be. So again, walleye fishing is all about getting your presentation, whatever presentation you're using, at the right depth. And we know walleye have those big eyes on top of their head, so they like to feed up. So it's better to obviously be above them. If they're feeding ferociously, they'll come up 10, 15 feet. But if they're finicky, you can be 6 inches below them and they ain't gonna bite. And so you have to sometimes put it right in front of their nose. But we wanna use our fish finder and use our temperature to guide what depth we're gonna fish at. And this is a time of year where you can use, we're using more lead core, whether it be 3 colors and some divers. You can start using 5 colors. You can put spoons on them. I still use mono with diving plugs. Sometimes you'll weight them. Again, for whatever reason, I've noticed, and maybe somebody else has, and maybe it'll change this year, but it just seems to me that the fish are more prone to hit these medium-sized lures, the lures that are, 3 or 3.5, 4 inches instead of these longer lures. So I'll use like a kaboom or a 24A bomber and target the depth, either adding weight to my mono to get them down to where we need to fish, or using the lead core And again, doing the math, so say 4 to 5 feet per color is what we typically say with lead core. And then you put your diver or your, whatever you're going to put on it. For the mono, I use clip-on weights. And you can do, there's a whole bunch of different ways you can do it, rubber bands, etc. I think this works very well. The rule of thumb, 4 to 5 feet for every ounce. So if I'm seeing fish around 35 feet off the point, we might want to use a 20-foot diver and add 2 ounces to get us down to about 30 feet. Try to stay above the fish pretty much. And this is when dipsies can start to be effective too. Our water is a lot clearer than it used to be.
Hey, Bob, we're gonna do how to add weight. So
okay.
This is a medium diver. And
sure. And the question is, how far do you go with the weight? Typically 30 to 50 feet. If you're running dipsies on the side, though, sometimes I'll go to 30 feet because if you have to be careful when you let this out. You go out too fast, you'll get your downrigger line. And if you put it too far back and you swing it over, you might catch your dipsy diver. So we just clip it on, and Lacey will catch the fish there for us. And then when we're reeling it in, you just take it off. Sometimes the rubber bands, you got to be careful that you don't injure your line. Just grab the rubber band and break it if you're using rubber bands. But this clip system works pretty well.
So that little simple trick takes a rod, your investment that you got already on the boat, and just by adding weight, you're going to lower that lure, several feet in the water. So as a rule of thumb, for every ounce, you're going to get about 4 foot of additional depth, really adding onto these lures. So it's a real easy way to take your hot lures or your medium divers, which we think the fish prefer, especially that time of year. And by just adding weight to your mono lines, and we'll show you what we do with the lead core earlier or later, it's just a really effective way to drop these down. And one other way to do it, if you guys don't want to use the pinch pads, pinch pads are quick and easy, is you can just take regular sinkers, and put the rubber band around these, right? This is a 3-ounce sinker. Same thing, you're going to let the lure out around 30 feet, maybe 40 feet, and you're just going to wrap this rubber band around the monofilament, cinch it up, and so that's going through the water like this. Real simple. The investment's a little easier. You can put a varieties on, or you can buy the clip-ons that Bob prefers. So a couple different ways to do that. And obviously, Bob will illustrate. I'll be reeling in the fish. Lacey's the fish. We're going to be bringing these in. It's good to have a guy with you. It's going to lower the rod and take it off, and there you go. Super easy. Wait. I just tipped my help. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. You can use jet divers in the deeper water too. It's amazing to me. We have Lake Erie, and yet the fishing seems to differ between what we do here in Erie, what they do in the West Basin, and what they do in the Eastern Basin in terms of some of the approaches, little differences. The Western Basin guys around Lorain and Cleveland, they love to use their jet divers all year long. I had the opportunity to compete, if you will, with a team from Lorain, just on a little adventure on my boat. They put the jet divers with worm harnesses on one side, and I used my lead core with divers on the other side. And they kind of kicked my butt even in the deeper water when they were going slower with my boat. They were trolling 1.5, 1.8. And the way they were just so you know, they were awaiting their jet divers with an inline type sinker that would go this part goes to your fishing line, and then the leader comes off the bottom. And they were getting depth, adding, another 10, 15 feet to their jet divers. So there's different ways. You pretty much do the math. Again, try to stay on top of the fish, or above the fish, I should say.
Yep, I think it's important for everybody. I mean, you're going to have guys that like jets. You're going to have guys that love lead core. Like I love lead core. And there's guys that really like using monofilament rods. And dial into your own program. Sometimes we want to chase other people's program. So it's important to, if you have a lot of mono rods, or you like to fish with monos, you don't really want to mess with lead cores. You can dial in your program pretty much all year by letting more line out, using a variety of different weights and a variety of different deep diving plugs to basically follow those fish right down into the water, as they descend into the water column with, mono rods. Bob explained how some guys use jets with worm harnesses. A lot of guys like worm harnesses. I fish worm harnesses once in a while. And they're very effective. It's a whole different program. The speed's got to be a little slower, but it's fun to mess with worm harnesses some days. But they're dialed into when the fish start to get deeper. They take that program, maybe use a bigger jet and more weight, and just take the same program and drop it 10 more feet, and they're re-engaged. We can do it with lead core, you can do it with jets, and you can do it with mono.
I just heard a confession. He uses worm harnesses occasionally. Okay. When we say mono, some people use braid. Just keep in mind the braid, goes a lot deeper than mono would, because, 50-pound braid has a 12-pound. It's the diameter of the line that makes a difference. But if you are using braid, I would highly recommend a fluorocarbon leader, to your bait, like Pete said, because it's more invisible. Yes, sir.
Do you use lead core with your jet divers?
No. The question was lead core with jet divers. No, we don't. No.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
He's referring to the holes on the bottom where you can. Is that what you're referring to? Oh yeah. Okay. They do have adjustable holes. I don't know enough about them.
No, I leave mine in the factory setting. I don't unsnap and move the holes. I leave them exactly where they are out of the box, and then I'm dialed into that. I don't adjust them. Yep. Nope. There's 2 or 3 different jets, at least I think 2 now, and I would advise you leave the holes, or you're snapping the hole in the same spot, and just dial into that really, and don't play with the holes with those. So this is also the time of year now. Our downriggers are playing a little more importance for us because the fish are slowly starting to get a little deeper. Sometimes they're a little deeper, and sometimes they're a little higher. But we're starting to catch more fish in our downriggers, and we're now deploying regular sized dipsy divers. I might run 4 dipsy divers this time of year. Okay, but I run monoline for my dipsy divers when targeting walleyes in that top 40 feet. A lot of guys like braid, and the other choice is wire for your dipsy divers, which we're going to talk a little bit later. But for that period of time, lake's starting to warm up. The fish we're still finding fish up high. We're starting to have fish descend because the water temperature is starting to warm up. So these fish are starting to drop a little. So we're catching fish maybe 15 feet down. We're catching fish maybe 45 feet down at the same time. So we're starting to deploy a little more deeper tactics. We're covering more of the water column. And what I like to do when I'm fishing, whether it's salmon, trout, or walleyes, I like to dictate the upper water column depth. That means how high are these fish going to be, do I think? So that's my starting point for high portions. And I'm going to use a fish hawk. I have investments on fish hawks in all the boats. I like to drop my fish hawk down this time of year to find where that cool water transitions again. So if I find, it's 68 on the surface, which is probably an average June temperature, 66, 68. These fish could be 10 feet down, 12 feet down, especially in the morning. I'm going to drop that probe down. I'm going to find where that water maybe dips to 60 or 58. And I'm going to establish that I'm probably not going to catch too many walleyes from that depth down. Not that everyone will be in that zone. But what I have done by using my electronics is established a kill zone of, say, 15 feet down to maybe 40 feet down. Walleyes could be anywhere in that kill zone. So, we're going to pollute the water with baits in there, whether it's how far we set our dipsies out, how far we set our flat lines with plugs out, or lead cores, and we're going to pollute that zone where temperature indicates these fish should be with these baits until the fish tell us, are they all like 20 foot down, 22 foot down, and then we're going to adjust to keep everything in that kill zone.
Right, and again, Pete's point, sometimes earlier in the morning, the fish are up higher, so don't ignore that. You may not be marking them on your fish finder when they're off the side of the boat, so you tend to fish a little higher in the morning. As the sun comes up, the fish do drop down in the water column. Pete mentioned he uses mono for his dipsy divers in the shallower water. Somebody asked a question about snubbers. Don't use a snubber with the mono. It's got plenty of stretch. You don't need a snubber there. With the braid dipsies, I use a lot of braid dipsies. I tend to use a snubber, but it's not really a shock absorber for walleye. Sometimes though, when you get the fish closer to the boat, when you're trying to net it, and especially if you have a long leader, it gives you a little bit of give, so it may not pull the hook out of their mouth as easy. So, and for steelhead, we definitely use the snubbers. But what do you think about downrigger fishing in 40 to 60 foot of water, Pete?
So, I'll give Bob a little bone here, a little tip maybe. Maybe he doesn't know this, but so what do fish want to do in the morning? They're like us, they want to eat, right? And back to a couple things I said earlier. So one of my downrigger walleye tricks is to always run one downrigger with a very short lead, almost like we're salmon fishing. What's a short lead? 15 feet, 20 feet at the most. We'll drop that down where I think, that zone is where the walleye should be, or maybe where we're seeing them on the screen sometimes, Bob, down there. And I'm going to drop a downrigger down with a very short lead. Anybody know why? Any salmon guys here? Ditch chicken. You should know why we run short leads off downriggers. Fish? All right, Captain Paul Snyder, who did this a couple years ago with me, is in the back. So everybody, there's Paul. Raise your hand, Paul. He's the ditch chicken charter. So everybody know that name? That's Paul. Anyway, like salmon, these walleyes are swimming around in the morning, low light. They're swimming around, right? They're looking to find something to eat. So they're attracted often to the downrigger hum, the downrigger ball, the boat maybe, in our instance, the noise. So you're going to get dumb walleyes, I call them, that will swim into your set or swim up to those downrigger weights. Some out of curiosity and some out of, they think it's maybe a ball of bait fish, something to eat. And so if your lures are 50 feet back, they swim in, look at the ball, hear the cables. Your lure's in a different zip code. Not going to get that walleye. So we like to keep one downrigger always tight in the morning. And more often than not, we set the downrigger down first. We're walking away to set other rods and doink, right away. We get one in a box, or sometimes 2 or 3 walleyes super quick with short leads off our downriggers, which a lot of people say you can't do it. It's too close to the boat. We're opposite. We keep a short lead many times and catch a lot of those dumb, aggressive walleyes in the morning.
Yeah, and the short leads have a big advantage. You're not going to get tangled as much when you're letting your board lines out. The other thing is, with some of this newer technology, this forward-facing sonars and all this other stuff, we think when a boat goes over the walleye, they scatter to the side, and they do, but they also go down. And sometimes when they're going down, they might see that downrigger and hit it. So I think there's reason to use them. I think one thing with downriggers is, with walleye, they obviously don't bite like a steelhead. So you have to set your release properly. I like to use these black releases with the adjustable tension and try to get it so it will release. You don't want to drag a fish around for all day long. Chamberlain releases people use. They have a magnetic sort of component to them, but try to set your downrigger release so that you'll get it to be just right when you get a fish on. Otherwise, you don't want to have to check them every 10 minutes, see if you're dragging them.
Right. I like to use a pinch pad release on my downriggers, like the Scotty pinch pad releases. For me, I can sometimes see the bite a little bit, like you see the rod tip move with pinch pad releases. So, and it's a little easier to set. You're just kind of pinching it in there real quick, and that's a little bit, you got to twist it. Little more technique involved with setting those and having to adjust the release like Bob does or has to do. So for me, it's just a simple Scotty pinch pad that has like the 18-inch tether to it. A lot of times when our downrigger rods are cranked over, we can see that little doink, doink, doink on those pinch pad style releases versus the blacks style releases. So personal preference again.
Right, and again, it's stick with what works for you. Whatever works on your boat, that's what you should stick with.
So we're gonna break for lunch. A couple things here. There's some stuff up here if you want. There's $20 off per $100 Fish USA purchase cards up here. They're internet use only. You can't use them at the store today, but they want these cards run through the internet. But any of you guys are going to spend over $100 in the near future, you can come up here and take one of these cards. They're a one-time use card, one and done, but it'll save you $20 on a minimum purchase of $100. So you're free to take some of these guys, and then we're going to reconvene in about 15 minutes. All right, Bob's going to lead off. So I'm going to dial you guys back in mentally where we left off. We're in the middle water. The lake's warming up. We're out deeper. We're starting to use the regular sized dipsy divers. We're deploying some downriggers in. And one of the guys come up during the break and he told me he catches a lot of walleyes off his downrigger 5 feet back. So just kind of like we were talking about, the dumb, easy ones. So it's that middle period, lake's warming up, temperature's starting to creep down, our baits and the fish are starting to move down. And then this is where we really dial into the lead core program, which I really love lead core. So Bob's going to lead off with the LC program.
Okay, and again, we're talking about getting to the depth where the fish are based on your fish finder. And in that time frame in June to early August, we're seeing the fish go down further in the water column, and we want to get to that depth where we can get the bites. So lead core, it scares a lot of people, but quite frankly, once you get used to it, it really is a very effective technique, and it's important how you rig it up. You have to pay attention. With board lines, if you don't pay attention for how far you're putting the lines out and you catch a fish, you're going to get tangled. So with lead core, you have to be a little extra cautious. And you can rig your lead core up however you want it. What we don't want to do is just put 10 colors on a reel and let 2 colors out, and then let a couple more colors out and having all that lead dangle. You really need dedicated rods, and you don't need to necessarily have 1 color, 2 color, 3 color, the whole thing, but you should have a range, 3 color rods, which would be 30 feet per color, so that would be 90 feet of line. You'll have a 40, 50 foot leader, and you'll have some backing, whether you use mono or braid. Rig your rods up identically. If you're careful with your rigging, you'll cut down on your tangles during the year. So this is the time of year when I rig my rods up, and I take the lead core is metered properly. So you put however many colors you want to use, 3 colors, 5 colors is very versatile. 5 colors is typical what we'll use, and make sure your leaders are the appropriate length. And I do put a length of fluorocarbon on the end because of the clarity of our water. Usually, my leaders are 50 foot on a lead core, and the question was how long of a fluorocarbon leader. Usually 10 feet. I use a little inline swivel between the mono and the fluorocarbon. Fluorocarbon leader material is really beneficial, not just because of the visibility, but it's a tougher line. Pound test for pound test, it's less nicks, etc. I tend to use gamma leader material. And you can use 16 pound, 12 pound, 20 pound test. It's invisible, so it's good stuff. So we're gonna then use our lead core to get into the range of where the fish are. So if the fish are in the 30-foot range in the end of June, and we won't have 5 colors on our boat, what we can do is put a spoon on a 5 color, and that will get that spoon down roughly 23, 25 feet above where the fish are. You could use a shallow plug that might get you 3 or 4 feet of depth, or then you can start using your divers, whether you can use a 12-foot diver to get down to the depth you want. You're just gonna do the math. So for the lead core, usually 4 to 5 feet per color. So a 5 color in that 22-foot range, 25-foot range, and then you add whatever lure you want to use. A spoon obviously won't dive, but the shallow plugs won't dive much. You can use whatever it takes to get to the proper depth to stay just above where the fish are on your finder. So lead core has the ability of catching fish, when mono won't. I tend to use mono on one side of my boat with weights and lead core, but some days some works better than others. But the lead core has the advantage of being stealthier, if you want to use that term. The lines are out further, so a little difficult to reel in. But lead core also undulates through the water. It snakes through the water. There's a lot more movement of your lure in and out of the strike zone, so that you're more apt to get a hit on the lead core, especially if it's a real calm, flat day and it's later in the morning or early afternoon. Those long presentations, getting away from the boat, really tend to make a difference. So you can use your lead core rigs to get to the depth you need. Pete's taught me everything I know about lead cores, so I'll let him chime in.
So, who fishes lead core here? So good, because I know a couple years ago when I did this, it was probably less. The lead core is extremely deadly. I mean, it is. It's a walleye killing technique. And so the lead core, I run, and I think Bob runs it too, is a product called Stealth Core. It's Stealth Core lead core. It's basically lead core. It doesn't have any other special diving characteristics versus other lead core. And it's named Stealth Core for 2 reasons, because years ago, we were always dumping this high vis lead core, which is your typical lead core. It's got bright colors, like it's got white, bright blues, oranges, reds, blacks, all kinds of color. When lead core was introduced to the Great Lakes a long time ago, probably before Chris Rhodes was born, it's been a long time. I'm paying attention to you back there. You too, Todd. It's been around a long time. So lead core, when this first came out, was specifically designed for anglers to count how much they were putting in the water. Okay, thus the multi-colored segments. And so your standard lead core came yellow, blue, green. Again, a bunch of different high vis colors so that guys can see. So the issue was, we're trying to catch these walleye, especially when walleye fishing gets tough. These clear, calm, flat days, which a lot of guys struggle with catching walleyes. We're dumping all this high vis stuff in the water, right? And then we got fluorocarbon leaders behind it. Great, right? So we feel we're spooking a lot of fish, putting multiple bright stuff in the water. So, years ago, I came up with the idea of talking to a manufacturer and say, why don't we just make this black and red? 2 colors, so you can still count how many go out. It's still 30 feet per color. Black's black, so we know black just Black disappears in the water columns, right? It's a stealthy color. Black dipsies, black downrigger weights. And red is the other color that we can still see up here, but as red descends in the water column, it starts to turn like a brownish black color. So it's probably the first color of many color choices that actually becomes stealthy the lower in the water color, the lower in the water column it goes. So we came up with this black-red color scenario. AV guy time. So we called it stealth core for obvious reasons, but it has the same characteristics as regular lead core. It dives about the same. We run mostly, Bob, you run 18 pound?
It comes in 18 or 27 pound. 18 pound has the advantage of you can get more line on a reel. So if you don't have a bigger capacity, because you want to make sure you have at least 500 feet of backing, 400, 500 feet of backing, whether you use mono or braid, that's up to you. But make sure you learn a good knot, how to tie lead core to mono and lead core to braid. It's really very important. Actually, I use the BQ knot that Pete invented for my mono backing. And I can attest it's very strong. I've reeled in a lot of foul hook sheephead with no issues. So it's a good knot. But you can go online and learn a good knot for the lead core. Okay, there is a YouTube video of the BQ knot, and it's very useful. It's very simple to tie as well.
So lead core helped make walleye fishing easier. I think again we catch a ton of walleyes off lead core. So that's a little bit about the lead itself. For me, I typically run and have a bunch of reels loaded with 5 colors of lead core. I know for a while there I had 5 cores on one side, 7 cores on the other, which again, a bunch more reels, a lot more investment. And for me, I guess disciplined myself or figured out a good program that was easy to use, just running all 5 colors of lead and just adjusting my lures. And if they're deep diving lures or shallow running lures, and following the fish down with the size of the bills of these lures to get more depth with, again, a simple 5-core setup. And then, once we get past where we're running, 5 colors of lead and these deep diving baits, now we're down in that 35 to 45 range with these lures with 5 colors. Once we get beyond that, we start simply adding lead to the front end of these lead core setups, again, using a 5-color setup and deep divers, and just basically following the fish down in the water column by just adding 2, 3 or 4 ounces, sometimes 5 ounces of lead on top of a 5-color setup.
Yes, definitely the most versatile setup. And you want to put all the lead in the water. So in other words, you're going to put all your lead in and maybe 50 foot of backing out before you hook it up to your board line. That way you get the full benefit of the lead core. You can run a little longer leads with backing if you want, but it's just a fine tuning type of thing.
Yep. And I use 18 pound lead core for walleyes. I use 27 pound for Lake Ontario for obvious reasons. Question? Yes, the front end. So where's lace? Put you in. Same thing. I'm gonna have you walk that out. So when these walleyes start to descend in the summer, they're dropping, all the way to September. We do the same thing we showed you earlier with the mono. Right there, lace is good. So right there is my connection to my leader and the lead core knot.
I just usually put it on the lead.
Either way.
Yeah, I usually put it on the lead, but you got to be careful that you don't want to damage that sheath. But put it just above the knot, that way it won't slide down. And you could achieve your 4 feet per ounce, roughly.
Yep. So the key is, let these out nice and slow. You don't want to free spool them, just at a nice, easy tension. If you let them out too fast, they'll helicopter down on you and cause you grief. So really, the lure Lacey has is a Renoski lure. It only dives about 4 or 5 feet, 5 colors of lead core, without the weight. That bait's fishing 25 to 30 foot of water down, right? It's in that range, depending on how fast we're going. By me adding, was that 3 ounces or 2? By me adding, 2 additional ounces, I'm going to get this whole assembly down another 6 to 8 feet, really, in the water column by buying a 20-cent weight and a $2 snap, really. I'm using the same setup and just add the weight and send it down. We've
Yeah, usually I put it just above the knot. You can put it on the leader if you want as well. It's interesting. We're in one lake, but people fish differently in the Western Basin and Eastern Basin. I know in the Eastern Basin, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I've heard some of the professionals lecture. They use a lot of lead core. They'll have 2 colors, 3 colors. They'll use it all year long. And they actually weight the back end of the lead core, thinking that it doesn't affect the undulation as much as the weight in front port. I'm not sure with all the smart troll stuff we have, but it's interesting. If you put it on the back, in other words, you put it on your back and just, once you're letting the line out, you're only going to get half as much depth. So if you put 4 ounces, instead of getting 20 feet or 16 feet, you're only going to get 8 or 9 feet. But I usually put mine on the front part, like Pete illustrated.
Yep, front part, so, if you guys are adding weight to their lead core, right, and they're catching fish, maybe you've got weight on your lead core, maybe you're not catching fish, ask them the question, are you putting the lead on the front, which is I call it the business end, where the lure is, that's called the front end, or are they snapping that weight on the back end? Because it's doing 2 different things depth-wise than what I'm doing. If I'm on the front end and he's putting it on the back end, we're not really in the same zip code. We're several feet off depending on the size of the weight by doing that. So it's important to know. I fish them on the front end. I think that achieves the ultimate or the quickest depth versus the back end. So we fish them on the front, have no issues catching fish. So that's where we keep them. Question? Yep.
You're fishing multiple 5 colors on the same side of the boat. How do you stagger them vertically in the water column with inline boards to get them to slide around, or do you slide the next board out?
Slide the next board out. The question is, how do you fish inlines and lead core without having tangles or stagger them? We keep them all the same. So when I say all the same, you let all the lead out and say 50 feet of backing, clip your board on. Next one, same thing. Next one, same thing. When those fish hit those inlines, you got to be a little patient, let them kind of filter back and clear the other ones, really. A lot of times the fish come up anyway, so it's going to avoid that tangle. But you get into trouble if you start staggering your leads, like lead core, 50 feet of backing, lead core, 100 feet of backing, lead core, 25 feet of backing. You're going to start finding different depths, which will probably lead to more tangles. So what we do is, we'll just pretend we're going fishing this morning, and we're going to set the port side of the boat. Walleyes are down 25 to 40 feet. That's the range they're at this morning. So we're gonna send one whole side with 5 colors of lead core and shallow running plugs. We're not going to mix plugs up. Shallow runners. The other side, right? We're going to send out 5 colors of lead core. Yep. And intermediate divers. Again, so that presentation on this side of the boat is going to be going deeper than this side in the morning. A lot of times your high side is going to catch more fish because the fish are a little higher in the morning. Typically, the other side might not be as productive. If it's obvious, we'll clear those rods that have medium divers, or maybe the temperature's up a little higher that day. And we're going to rip these off, or we're going to put all shallow running baits on both sides until what? Until the bite slows down, right? Or maybe the sun comes up, and then we're going to start putting medium divers out on one complete side and see if we can start generating more bites by using our heads and make an adjustment. Just with the plugs. Same lead.
Yes, sir.
What happened if you put 6, 7, or 8 colors of lead core instead of adding weights?
Well, 7 colors is like 210 feet, and it'll go down that 35 feet. So you can do that. You can have, we use 10 colors even sometimes in the fall with shallow divers or deeper divers. So you'll get your weight. That piece saying the 5 colors just give you it's versatile. You can adjust them, and you can fish up in that 25 foot and all the way down as well. Okay.
That just shows the
Right,
setup.
that shows the setups with the medium divers and the shallow divers. Yes, sir.
For release about your planer board line.
Planer board releases, again, use what works for you. It depends on whether your backing is mono or braid. If you're using braid backing, you probably pretty much need to use rubber bands with whatever release you're going to use. I have mono backing on my lead cores, and I just use the pinch pads, but they're the black ones that aren't as grippy as the red ones. The red ones you can never get off the board. You can adjust the tension on those with the spring, but whatever works for your boat. There's all kinds of different releases. But if you're using braid backing, definitely use the rubber band, because the braid will just kind of slip through whatever clip you're using.
So like my lead core setup's maybe a little different than Bob's, and the size of your reel has a lot to do with how much backing you can put on these lead cores. If you have bigger reels, you can run pretty much all mono behind them because you have more capacity in your reel. So like my 5-color lead core setup is really, a snap. I like 30 foot of fluorocarbon leader, typically 15 or 16 pound material. I don't like anything lighter. I don't think it makes a difference at all. It just gives you more security when you catch big fish or you catch a lot of fish. You're not breaking off as much. So I got a snap. I got about 30 feet of fluorocarbon leader, 5 colors of lead core, right? This is where it gets a little bit naughty, as they say. I will splice in about 120 feet to 150 feet of higher vis monofilament line, 20-pound line, okay? And then I will use 30-pound braid as my backing, so I can put more line on my reels, basically. That's the main reason I can get more in there, because the reels I use don't have a tremendous amount of capacity for lots of line. So the reason I splice in that segment of mono is because whether you use a pinch pad release, way easier versus trying to pinch braid, which is it's slippery. You get a lot of false releases, or then you got to put them in too tight, and then you can't get them to trip. So having that segment of monofilament in the back allows me to use either pinch pads or a rubber band. I hook a clip with a rubber band onto the mono. Way more forgiving, way easier to use than having all that braid behind there. So it works very good. And, when you have all braid in the back, again, releases are tough. You get a lot of false releases, especially if you're fishing, a lot of water, your boat's surging in. They trip easy, and it's tough on the hands. So we like a section of mono in there. Go ahead.
I fish with Disney divers a lot.
Yep.
Being out in the lake and see other people trolling with planer boards, some of them use like the individual boards, like yellow boards for each individual rod.
Right.
Some boats with like the big wooden planers out the side, they use the main line. What's your preference?
So the question is, big boards versus inline boards. So I'm 90% big board guy because I fish 4 to 5 lines per side for me. And we don't have to fight the boards. A disadvantage of inline boards are they will pull behind the boat a little bit. You can't get your lures as far away. You get more tangles with them. And when you're fighting these walleyes that just are tremendous fighters, okay, you're fighting that board for an extended period of time, as well as the fish. So, but it's quick and easy though.
Potomac River once in a while on a charter, and they use the big boards with carabiners and rubber bands.
Right.
Control 5-6 mile an hour. When a striper hits it, we're fishing for stripers.
Yep. Okay.
When a striper hits it, the rubber band just snaps and your rod just goes.
Yep. So that's almost similar to what we do. We don't troll that fast, obviously, but rubber bands. So most of the charter boat guys who fish Lake Erie are all running big boards. The guys who fish more warm programs, or a lot of your pro tournament guys, a lot of those guys use night crawler rigs with lead core or weights and inline boards. One of the other disadvantages of inlines is, when you got to turn that boat around and troll into a 2, 3, 4, 5 foot chop going into them, those little boards skip, they dive, they have a lot of issues. So that's where you have way more advantages running these big boards. Are they more of a pain in the butt? Yep. Do you have a mast or a different way to get them out there? Yep. But are they walleye fish killers? Absolutely. So, Bob,
Right.
you're
Yeah.
an inline board guy?
Well, no, I'm a big board guy for walleye. We use inline boards for steelheader fishing close to the shore. I have to say there's a much bigger variety of inline boards available nowadays. Before, some of the ones were too light and you try to put lead core on them and it would stay behind the boat. You couldn't get it off to the side. But the little boards have gotten better. And for those of you that use them, they certainly do work. You just have to be careful, like Pete said, when you get a fish on. That's the most important thing with lead core, is to avoid tangles. When you're in a tangle-free zone, you'll have a lot more fun. We know how frustrating that can be. So you get a fish on the outside board with lead core, it's even more important to let that fish drift in the back of the boat before you start reeling. Move your other lines down so you don't get the tangles.
Right. So jumping back to the 5-core setup that I use, and a lot of guys use it now, you could just use that same setup, same leader, same backing, same everything, put it out the same place pretty much every day, and simply alternate your lures from, shallow divers, which are obviously that setup's not going to be going as deep, to right. Bob's going to show you, like a Renoski Fire Tiger, that setup's going to be going down 25, maybe 30 feet at the most. If that isn't effective, or the fish have now, sunk deeper in a water column, or through the day they've sunk deeper, you simply go to a medium diver, right? And that's going to get you down another 6 to 8 feet deeper than that Renoski, maybe 10 feet deeper, right? Every medium diver is a little different, but know where they work. And then, all of a sudden the lake is getting warmer. It's warmer. Now we're pushing into July. It's into August, and the temperature is down there, right? You're seeing a lot of these walleyes down 45 to 55 feet. So we simply use that same 5-color setup, and we'll start dumping these deeper divers, at least on one side, if not both sides, and just basically use our lures with the same set and just follow these fish down the water column by adjusting our lures. Real simple. Then when they get beyond, normal deep divers, we go to that weight technique and start adding maybe 2 ounces plus the deep divers, maybe 3 ounces. We might start with a side of 5 cores, deep divers, 2 ounces, 5 cores, deep divers, and 3 ounces. And often that 1 ounce makes a tremendous difference.
Huge difference. Again, we want to be above the fish. That's when they'll come up and hit it. And if they're not actively feeding, you need to be right in their zone, but not below them. 6 inches too low
Right.
can make for a long afternoon of looking at
Yep.
rods.
So one thing about walleyes is they're not super aggressive. And if you miss, I'll call it the mark or that target zone by 3, 4, 5 feet, where you're a little too deep maybe, or you're too high, that's the difference between, Bob catching 30 fish today and maybe somebody else catching 12 fish. Same water, same working the same area, but his bait's running, 4 or 5 within a few feet of them fish, right? Versus the other fella who is, 8 feet above those walleyes. You're not going to get too many walleyes coming up 8 feet to grab lures. You're really not. So 1 ounce in these setups, or a diver, a lure that dives 18 feet versus 12 feet can make a huge difference in walleye fishing. Huge difference.
Yes, sir.
Is there a dive difference between an 18 and 27-pound lead core?
That's a good question. I've asked that question many times myself. people using the smart troll device, have tried it, and they tell me there's no difference. They say it's 4 to 5 feet. The 27 pound does have obviously more diameter, so you would think it'd go less deep. The lead is supposedly the same as 18. Is that correct?
So, lead's the same.
So the 27 may go a little less deep than the 18. I don't know, but I don't think it's a drastic difference.
Correct. It's probably minimal, but maybe a little bit. The sheath is a little bit different. So, go ahead.
You're pretty confident that you're in the fish and just not hitting. Do you first like to change the color of the same type of lure that you're using? Or do you change the type of lure? Or do you do them both? Try to figure out what they want to eat.
I'd say if you know you're in the right zone and your depth, your lures are in the right zone, definitely a lure color choice change would definitely be first for me to do. Absolutely. And then, so we didn't hold up the deeper, a little later in the year program.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it. So we're going to advance up to, that middle of summer. The lake's still a little bit cool, but it's definitely warming to, now we're pushing the end of summer. Now we're into August, we're into September. The lake is definitely a lot warmer, right? And the fish, for the most part, have descended down into where we're using maybe 5 colors with weights and pushing further offshore in that 60 to maybe 120 foot of water now. In the first trench, backside of the mountain, straight off the point. But definitely they keep pushing out because the water's warm.
Yep. Yeah, and then there's, that's to me one of my favorite time to fish of the year, because the fish are bigger. They tend to be down deeper in the water column. They're sort of starting to put on the feed bag, if you will, for the winter. So you can catch some really nice walleye, and a lot of them during that time of year. Pete's referring the first trench.
Hey, Chris. I think Bob just gets nervous inside of 70 feet.
Yeah, right.
Right? Would you agree?
Yeah,
He's afraid of hitting his $20,000 props or something. No.
Yeah, I don't go too
I'm just kidding.
No. But yeah. So again, we're talking first trench off Walnut all the way down to Elk Creek, the Ohio line. Second trench can be good. There's a lot of currents that come through here. This is the ledge where the St. John does their dredging every day, twice a day in the summer, take that sand out. This is a good area in August and September. Off the point, you don't necessarily need to go to the Canadian line. Sometimes this is really good out here, and sometimes it's no good. It's just going to be what Pete calls vapor water, no fish. But in this 80 foot, off the condos, 70-some foot, north of the mountain, at 90, 100 foot of water, this is where the fish tend to be in August and September. Okay. Since this is a palooza, I'll just throw up a question out here. What do you guys think? What do you guys think full moon affects walleye fishing? Who thinks it affects walleye fishing? Okay. There's some hands raised. All right. We used to have
that's breakable.
An older charter captain.
Wait.
Calling him older, but may he rest in peace, who would actually schedule his charters around full moon. He believed that it was a real problem. I think from my standpoint, we have a lot of walleye now, so it's a little less of a factor, but with a full moon, I think, especially if it's calm water, you get a much better bite early in the morning. It's darker, and then you might get a lull until late morning or noontime when they start to get hungry again. But fortunately, we have enough walleye that it's not drastic. But if it's a real clear night, with those eyes above their head, big eyes, they feed all night. That's the theory. And they're less hungry during the day.
I'd say full moon is like 50%. I think 50% of the time it impacts the bite, makes it a later bite that we see. And I think the other 50% is throw it in a garbage can. It doesn't mean anything. You see absolutely no difference. They bite hard and heavy in the morning. no difference. But then there's that other 50% of the time that we start. Maybe it's an excuse for us.
It's a
right?
good excuse.
It's a good
It really
excuse
is.
that's the full moon. You know.
Yeah, you got to have excuses. You know, full moon, east wind. You know, that's the way. If you come home
So.
without any fish, your wife. Yes, sir.
All right, Lacey, you got to work this side of the crowd.
Okay.
This is, you know, it's your call. Whoever smiles the nicest or asks you the nicest, that's yours to give away.
I'm sorry.
You're,
With the Budweiser, Western Basin, he started Walleye magazine, and when we had a full moon, he would have, I would be in his house at 4 o'clock in the morning, get out there for dinner, and we would fish rattling lures early in the morning.
Yeah.
So the other thing is upon us that maybe has a lot to do with this is that the age or the era we're in with so many walleyes in the lake right now, we're percentage wise, you know, on a tough bite, there's still a lot of walleyes to work through versus maybe the 90s. Anybody that fished through the 90s here, where's Supermate at? Is Supermate in the house? He should have fished through the 90s. You know, the 90s for a period of time was if you caught 18, you were a hero. It wasn't about catching 18 in an hour. It was about pulling 18 for the whole entire day because the average guy was pulling 4 to 6 fish, 7 fish. So back when you had the full moon theories going on then, we actually, he brought up a good point. We would definitely try and leave a little bit earlier because in the event that was the 50% day where it mattered, we really were in trouble already because you left the harbor and it was bright, or some days it was already bright and calm. So those days we were very, I guess, more aware of that because fishing was a lot tougher. We're a little bit spoiled right now. We are. So not as important maybe, but
Yep.
I say it's 50-50.
Yep.
Rattling lures was the biggest thing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the action and sometimes the rattle does attract good ones. With a lot of lures have beads in their head now.
So the other thing Bob and I deploy, and a lot of charter boat guys, again, wire. We use wire. Who has wire line dipsy divers? So not too many guys. So wire line is not super new. It was really derived from the deep water lakes like Lake Michigan, Lake Ontario, because really we were pursuing fish that were down 70, 80, 90, 150 feet down. And back in the day when we were just using monofilament with our dipsy divers and then braid come out, we still could not get these dipsy divers down to where the fish were on these Great Lakes, where the salmon were, right? So that technique or methodology really came from the other lakes. So, you know, lo and behold, it finally caught on in Lake Erie. You know, we were routinely running 4-wire dipsies because I had the investment from Lake Ontario. So when these walleyes started to get down that 60, 70, 80, and even like 90 feet out there late September, you know, we're pulling out these wire dipsy rods and using either regular sized dipsies or these Magnum Dreamweaver dipsies, which are big. But, you know, I'm able to get my wire dipsy program with primarily spoons, like super slim spoons, down. Really, I can get these down 140 feet if I want to. I know that because I've hit bottom in Lake Ontario. We catch a lot of salmon down deep. So, you know, the importance of wireline dipsy diver fishing became very important to get more lures in the water. You know, I run 4 of them once the fish get deep because now it's hard to get these lead core setups down 65 to 80 feet, where a lot of these walleyes will end up late in the season, late September and into October. They are in the abyss. I mean, we're catching them 90 feet down with downriggers. Now, downriggers become more effective again, but wireline dipsy divers are a huge part of the program when these walleyes really get below probably 60 feet and deeper. So
Yeah, it's amazing how many fish, like Pete said, you can catch on a walleye, catch on downriggers 90 foot down off the point or off the mountain. The fish are deep that time of year. This is a wire rod. It's a flagship Fish USA rod, and it's 7-stranded wire, whatever brand you want to use, 7-stranded stainless steel. And you notice it has a special tip first of all, these guides are made for wire. Because if you try to use a regular rod, the wire will groove your rod with the force that dipsy puts on the rod when you're trolling at 2 miles an hour, 2.5 miles an hour. It erodes the eyes. But these eyelets are bulletproof, and that little tip on the end is called a twilly tip. That prevents you from grooving the end eyelet. So it's very important if you're going to use wire, stainless steel for your dipsies, to have the proper rod. The reel is up to you in terms of what capacity. I usually rig, I don't know if you can see, just a couple of beads to keep it from people from reeling it right into the rod with a snap swivel and a little bit of shrink wrap tubing. I just tie a overhand loop with the wire, and you can slide it over your terminal tack. Use a bigger snap swivel, and you hook your dipsy up and go from there with a fluorocarbon leader on your dipsy.
Right. So again, extremely effective. This isn't us trying to say we want you to go buy 2, 3, or 4 wireline dipsy setups from Fish USA. It'd be great if you did, but this is what we do. We're not salesmen, but this is 4 wire dipsy setups on the boat. And there's days where I would say our wires, 50-60% of the fish we catch that day are coming off 4 rods when they're down deep. Highly effective. If you're going to stay inside a 50 foot of water and never really monkey around going that deep water, maybe you don't need them, right? Maybe they're not as effective, or skip them, use your braid. But when you want to chase these fish down in the water column, these are an extremely effective way to follow the fish down, and they're still relatively fun. The wire has no stretch, so you actually can feel the fish fight relatively well on these. And this is we'll run snubbers a lot of times with the wire because there's no stretch on that wire, and snubbers will help us a little bit.
I don't know, roughly as a rule of thumb, for the same amount of line out with whatever dipsy setting you have. With mono, you'll get a certain depth. With the super braid, you'll get maybe 10 foot more, and with the wire, you'll get another 10 foot for a given setting as opposed to the braid. So it definitely gets deep. Yes, sir.
What's your biggest speed, let's say, midsummer and then September?
Speed, question is favorite speed for midsummer and then September for walleye. I still pretty much keep the same, the 2.2 to 2.5 range, 2.6. If we're fishing for steelhead, sometimes you can go a little faster, but the walleye bite is roughly the same.
That ground speed?
That's speed over ground, but also, we know Lake Erie has a lot of currents, and the currents, I'm not talking about the surface current with the wind. The currents are usually down deep in the water column, right where your baits are going to be. So using a fish hawker, giving you an idea of what the speed is down there, what the action of your lure will be down where your lure is at, makes a difference. So but usually we're talking about speed over ground, GPS speed. Yes, sir. The question is, use wire for the Magnum dipsies or braid. You can use both, whatever works for you. But again, if you put the Magnum dipsy on a 7-strand stainless, you're going to get deeper than you would with the super braid.
Right. Yep, absolutely. So these Magnum dipsies they're heavy, but they're a really great tool for not having to put as much line out and getting down deep if you're chasing these walleyes in that deep water, or if you're chasing trout out there, right? Same difference. If you're chasing lake trout out deep, or steelhead out deep, great tools to get down deep without as much line as your traditional dipsy divers. Go ahead.
I was going to say, you went on current. How about direction? And the two together.
So current direction, I always like to troll with the wind. I'm a wind guy. I like the wind at my back normally. So I find that normally productive. And direction is where the fish are. I guess if the fish are in 70 foot of water, my direction is going to be more east and west to try and stay in 70 feet of water. If we're searching for fish, it might be a northwest, northeast, kind of zigzagging. going a little deeper, seeing what the water's doing, see if the bait's out there, if there's more fish. So direction is, to me, is I'll let the fish dictate that.
We had a question. We had a question though during the break that I think something we all see. You know, say you're in 65 feet of water and you're going east and you're catching fish and you're going 2 miles an hour on your speed over ground. You turn around in the same line and you can't catch them. This is what people say. I think we've all seen that happen. And to me, what's going on is wherever your baits are, there is some current, and that speed over ground that you're using going east may not be proper for going west. If the fish are still there and you're not catching them, adjust your surface speed because the action of the lure may be different if there's a bottom current. I won't get into any more scientifically, but you may have to find that whereas 2.0 might be a sweet spot going east, it might be 2.5 or 2.6 going west to get those same fish.
So we're going to wrap up in a few minutes here. So a couple things. So a lot of seminars over the years have been taught more physical. When I mean more physical, you're talking about the rods, right? Dipsies, lures, physical stuff like the temperature, using a fish hawk, all this stuff. So the last couple of years, you know, where everybody's looking for new material or trying to add a little twist to seminars, and I think a lot of seminars overlooked something that we all have. Anybody could, Lace, I might need you. So what is something everybody has in this room that we can use a little better? Brains. You guys are good. All right. Bob, you want to hand Lacey a mug and a hat so that you got two more to go. All right, whoever said the brain, you it's all her. So just to conclude here with the brain, the concept of using our minds a little better. You know, like Bob's got the nicest fishing rig up here. You know, I've got a lot of nice gear. We can all have these nice setups, can have all the fancy stuff, fish hawks, great panoptics, fish finders. But a lot of the what makes a lot of better anglers, great anglers, or average anglers, better anglers, I guess, is that some guys use their heads. They pay attention to details. Up here, they notice temperature changes. They notice things happening down below with their fish finders. Maybe the whole bite changes. They pay attention to watercolor. They pay attention to maybe variable degrees difference in surface temperature versus a better bite, a tougher bite, a great bite. Maybe it's just strictly water temperature. The difference is, like Bob has a tendency, like when Bob fishes tournaments, I like to see Bob's boat running a lot when we're fishing. Like when you see the big, I'm like, Bob's in trouble. You know, Bob's hurting. We see Bob blasting out. But to give him credit, I'm making fun of him, but I'm just using an example because we all do it. You know, we're competitive guys by nature. You know, no one likes to go to the dock with 12 walleyes when the whole fleet caught 24 or 36, right? It's like we all have that little bit of an ego. We're supposed to catch fish. We're supposed to be good anglers. So no one likes to get our butts whooped. It's kind of embarrassing. And no one likes to be on a charter all day and twiddling your thumbs, right, Tony? Like fishing in the bay all day, right? We don't like it. It's uncomfortable when we're paid good money to take people fishing. So a lot of what makes good anglers better is how they use the noodle and noticing all kinds of subtle changes, making sure the lures are as simple as tuned up. Every lure is tuned up, right? Your leaders are redone. You're prepared to go fishing in the morning. You're not setting out to the trolling spot. You're starting to put your boards out and you're like, hey, Tony, where are the lures at? They're down in the cabin, right? So we're burning up valuable time, jonesing for lures. They're tangled. We go to put our dipsies on. They're all wadded up because we just wadded them up. So all this time is wasting away in the morning because we weren't prepared. We weren't mentally prepared. You know, we do our homework. Like when the wind blows certain directions for so many days, I'm like, if it blows northeast for a while, I know my boat's probably going to be going more north that day right away. I'm already thinking of making a move. When Bob's not on fish, that guy pulls everything in and he just jets the hell out of there. Excuse the French, but he's gone. He's not going to stay there as they say, don't rot in dead water. He's moving because he doesn't want to take a boat ride, and his mind's like, this ain't happening. This water's no good. The fish moved, so therefore he moves, right? All good stuff. So that's what a lot of us do is we use our mind, and you could expand upon the mind part because not a lot of us talk about mind stuff in our seminars.
I mean, it's true. And I think we all get into a situation where we killed the fish the day before, right? I mean, it just, they were jumping in the boat. So we're going to go there the next day. Okay. But, and even though the screen looks different and there was different winds overnight, you're convinced that those fish were there yesterday. They got to be there today. And you're not getting them and that's what happens. Conditions change on Lake Erie so much. I mean, they've changed from the 80s and 90s to now in a big way with the water clarity and other things, but they change from day to day and hour to hour. And the currents and the winds, the water temp really makes a difference. It doesn't hurt to be lucky either. So
right. Yeah, so if anything, besides all the fancy stuff we talked about and having wire dipsies and magnum-sized dipsies, really everybody here, including myself, you got to work on the mental part of fishing, right? The mental part is really what drives many of the decisions that we make every single day. What our lure choices are, it tells us when to start changing the lures, when to pull a side off and replace that side with a whole different bunch of, a whole new setup because it starts to stroke. It tells us we better go north, because this inside stuff not panning out. It's like it triggers us to start making moves. So I guess if we leave you with anything besides the physical aspect is improve on the mental aspect of fishing. That's true in life and everything really, but work on your mental aspect and, learn, read, all that stuff because knowledge is pretty critical. You could have great everything, but you can still take it on the chin that day fishing because you made bad decisions. Or you didn't go to the right spot, or you didn't change fast enough. You didn't amend your program with changing conditions, and you just left the stuff sit out there all day, and you caught 6 all day. Well, you deserve it. You deserve that one. Next day, look to improve and catch 10 or improve your game. Everybody's here hopefully to try and learn, improve their game, even if it's 2 fish difference. You're used to catching 6 all day, shoot for 9. Things like that. Just trying to amp your game up and improve yourself as an angler. And by learning, you can have all the physical stuff in the world, but the noodle drives a whole lot of things for us. And that's what separates, great from good or average is the moves and the decisions that people make while they're fishing. So, Bob,
yes, sir.
How about you talk every morning? What about afternoon and evening fishing?
Walleye fishing can be good with the population of walleye we have now all day long. And, you may, again, midday, the fish might be a little deeper. If it's a bright day, you adjust your program a little bit. But evening fishing's awesome. I love going fishing in the evening. The downside is you get in, it's getting dark, and you got to clean all those fish. But and we've been there, done that.
Long day.
Long day. But all day long is good. You just have to adjust accordingly. Yes, sir. Vertical jigging. No, unfortunately, I don't have that expertise.
No vertical jigging here. So some guys do it, but it's definitely a unique thing, and we stick with the trolling for ourselves. So, got time for like 2 more questions. So, Bob, you be the bad guy.
Okay, the question was, there's some days you go out and there's fish on the screen and you're fishing and you're not catching them, and then all of a sudden around 9:30 they start perking up. Is all I can say is that sometimes the walleye will feed more ferociously than others. I've seen that happen myself. It's counterintuitive. You think you're going to get more fish in the morning, which is the usual case, but yeah, I guess it happens, and I don't look a gift horse in the mouth. I take them and try to take advantage of that time of day. But yeah, I've seen it happen. I don't know any other explanation. Maybe water clarity is changing, or the bait is moved in to.
Or they fed real early
Right.
that morning, and
Yeah.
you're catching round 2 of the bite, right?
Yep.
It was a much earlier bite, and you're catching round 2, which they do bite again.
Yep.
So go
One
ahead.
more question. Okay. This is.
What would be your preference as far as rod length and weight?
See you.
Okay, the question was preference regarding rod length and rod weight. I think for planer board rods, you want a rod that has a flexible tip so you can tell. And by the way, uniformity is really important when it comes to planer board fishing. You want those rods to be identical. So they have a decent backbone, but a flexible tip, so you'll be able to tell if there's a silver bass or a small walleye hanging on it. Pete uses 7-foot flagship rods for his boards. You don't have to look up as high. You don't get a stiff neck if you're looking to see if there's fish on. I've used mostly the 8-foot rods, but again, I think it's uniformity that's important. Okay, for the dipsy divers, if you can run 8 and 9-foot or 9 and 10-foot off the side of the boat, depending on how big your boat is. Downrigger rods don't matter as much, but whatever works for your boat.
The Bob Z.
One comment. One of the things regarding full load east wind, the Ohio Valley storm affects our fishing. You got it. I've heard this a long time ago from the old commercial fishermen. It doesn't affect us up here. So if you're watching Tom Hanks or whatever, and you see we're going to have a storm coming up the Ohio Valley, that's going to affect the fish more than you can imagine. So it's something that I told a long time ago, but it does affect our fishing up here, according to the journals that I kept over the years.
Ohio Valley Storm, correct? There you go. You got a tip from Bob in the back. We're gonna guest speaker 2026. We're gonna get you up here. The old tips. That was a good tip. So we're gonna conclude. You guys can ask a few more questions, but again, a couple housekeeping things. You got the Suns back there again on the way out. If you didn't get a membership, they have their ice out party on the 30th, right, guys? Between 1 and 5 at the Shrine Club at 38th and Zuck. It's a great event. They have lots of raffles, of course, hot dogs and food. So that's 1 to 5 on the 30th. Good event. Keep that in mind. The EPSFA has their kids fishing day the 24th of May. You can go to the Erie PA Sports Fishing Association website, but it's a kids fishing day event May 24th. And then Matt over there, wave your hand. Matt selling memberships for the EPSFA, the Sports Fishing Association in Erie. And we have if you sign up, you get a free drawing for a walleye charter with Nemesis Charters, right, in conjunction with the membership. So that's a little different twist. And really want to thank Bob here for accompanying me in this seminar. He's a great guy, a wrath of knowledge, very professional guy. He's a pleasure to always to know, talk to, and fish with or against in as many instances. So attaboy for Bob. Lacey, hands up. My assistant here. So I appreciate her volunteering very quickly to do the runner task. So that was pretty cool. Her dad needs to take her fishing a little more often, I heard. So a little pressure from me up here, a little more fishing maybe. Of course, the Fish USA folks, so thanks for hosting the event again. And everybody that came, again, thanks. And so see these guys, the Suns, go buy a couple things on the way out. See Matt over there, but we appreciate everything. Nick, you want to say anything? Come on up. Nick, come on. Nick, I'm up here. You got to come up here. Come on up here. All right.
We don't want
Billy, you want to close this out? You're good? So I'm going to hand this off to Billy. Billy's with Fish USA, of course. So thanks again for coming. Thanks, Doc.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all. Appreciate it.